And that's us. See, now we're live, and I am recording. And so today, yes, once again, we're talking about Roman culture. And notice always keep your study guide handy, which I will pull up for you to begin with. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, here we go. We're talking about Roman numeral 6, I do believe. That was where we left off. As stated before, one of the most lasting legacies of the Roman Empire was their engineering. I mean, the Romans were the great engineers of the ancient world. It is miraculous what they were able to accomplish. When you consider the fact that, once again, they didn't have steam shovels, they didn't have any kind of mechanized equipment. The only thing they had was, well, of course, slave labor. But aside from that, I mean, they had Greek math, Greek geometry. I mean, for example, the Romans built a shopping mall into the side of one of the seven hills of Rome. And to do that, they basically dug the hill away. And the hill was made of dolomite rock. And that meant they had thousands of slaves picking and picking and picking with, just copper picks until they cleared out enough territory. And then they shaped the shopping mall in a horseshoe pattern to provide support for the mountain so that the mountain wouldn't fall down, because of erosion. I mean, the Romans already understood what happens in engineering, and so they built their building like a horseshoe so it would support the mountain that they just dug into. And that structure, the horseshoe element of it, is still there. It's still there, even though it was built in the 2nd century AD. Not to mention 25,000 miles of roads, not to mention bridges, not to mention the aforementioned aqueducts. Now, Roman aqueducts. Share screen. Give me a sec. Look at pictures. I had it up here. Aqueduct. Yeah, here. Now I can tell you guys when you take the test, you'll see this picture again. This is basically the cross section of a Roman aqueduct. Now remember that they had to get water from point A to point B. The only force they had to work with is gravity, which actually today is still the basic force of basic plumbing, is gravity. That's what creates water pressure. I mean, for example, the water pressure in this building. How do they get water to the water fountains, for example, on the 2nd floor? And the answer is quite simple. Somewhere around here, there's a water tank that is higher than the 2nd floor. Now, of course, the question is, how do they get the water from underground, which actually they don't. They actually have it pumped in from the Ohio River. You do know that the water we drink comes from and used to wash our clothes and take baths comes from the Ohio River. It's been gone through a processor though, purified and that kind of thing. Then they pump that water using electric motors to the top of that tank. And then because the tank that holds the water is higher than those faucets on the 2nd floor or wherever else, then you have water pressure. Okay? And to be honest, that's how they get water literally up to the tallest buildings in the world. They use a series of pumps. But the Romans didn't have electric pumps. And so what did they do? They would go and find a source of water that was higher than the city of Rome. And then they began constructing these. Miles and miles it looks like a giant bridge. And the only key thing was you had to keep the water flowing downhill. And see, that was the genius of it. That they had to plan a constant decline, a constant slope, 50 miles. I mean, there was no pumping station. It was an incline that ran 50 miles, giving away just every 100 feet, maybe just an inch. And so the water would just keep flowing. And they were able to supply enough fresh water for the city of Rome, which in the 2nd century had 1 million people. I mean, that's really incredible. Fact of the matter is, the aqueducts were both the strength and the weakness of the city of Rome. When the city of Rome finally falls, is conquered by barbarians in the 5th century, the barbarians could not prevail against the walls of the city of Rome. And so what they did, they tore down the aqueducts. Yeah, they tore down the aqueducts, water quit flowing into the city, and the city of Rome surrendered in 3 days. Lack of drinking water, but also more importantly, the 2 jobs of plumbing. And I know I'm a nut about plumbing. I think about plumbing all the time. And I know I've told you this before, but it probably has to do with the fact that I didn't have indoor plumbing when I was a kid. But plumbing does 2 things. Number one, it brings you water to drink. But more importantly than that, plumbing, modern plumbing, ancient plumbing, didn't matter, takes away wastewater. We all produce waste. As human beings, we produce waste. And to keep a healthy environment, we have to have some way to get that waste away from us. And for example, and I know you're not anywhere near as curious about waste as I am, or wastewater, but all of the waste, the flushing of toilets, the emptying out of washing machines, of dishwashers, of anything that uses water anywhere, it goes into a sewer. And so, well, where does it go then? Well, it's then pumped. And by the way, did you know, I'm sure you've all seen it, right next to the Ryle football soccer stadium, across that road in the cow pasture, there's this thing that looks like a spaceship, a saucer, that has buried itself into the ground, a dome. You ever wonder what that is? That's a pumping station for sewage. It pumps sewage, and where does it pump it? It pumps it right up next to, if you've ever been to Ludlow, which sits on the Ohio River, it's close to Ludlow. It's called the Dry Creek Treatment Plant. All the sewage in the greater northern Kentucky area, I mean Kenton, Boone, Campbell counties, is all pumped to this one. And I've visited this place. I know, trust me, I had to do it for a class, so I'm not that interested. But trust me, you would know if you went there. It sits down in the valley, and you get the smell when you approach it. And that plant takes all of the wastewater from all of those Kenton, Boone, Campbell counties, and it basically separates the sludge. And I don't even want to go into what sludge is, but you know what it is. The sludge is separated from the water through use of chemicals, filters, charcoal, sand. It has a very complex way of doing it. And then the water is put back into the Ohio River. Yeah, that same Ohio River that we get our drinking water from, they put the water back into the river, and it flows on down to Louisville, and people in Louisville drink RP. Of course, we drink the P of Pittsburgh, but that's okay. I mean, it's what happens. Now you say, well, what about the sludge? Actually, they take that and they begin building it into a mound. And after the mound gets so high, they cover that mound with topsoil and plant trees on it. And then they start building another. Yeah, and that's what happens. But the Romans didn't have anything quite that complicated. The Romans had this, and water came into the city, and it Some of the richer people, their homes got running water directly. They had their own baths, they had their own running water, indoor plumbing. But the Romans they took care of the public. They had public toilets. The Romans understood, everybody understood, that if you don't do away with your sewage and you let your sewage live next to you, then people get sick. And so the Romans had a sewer system. In fact, the the Colloquius Maximus is a sewer that was built by the Romans before the birth of Christ. That simply the sewage went into the Colloquium Maximus, dumped out into the Tiber River, and flushed out into the ocean. Well, the Colloquium Maximus is still in use today, not as a sewer anymore, but as a to catch rainwater. Rainwater flows into that Colloquium Maxima and then goes out in the Tiber River. But I mean, the Romans had it all taken care of. They are incredibly genius. So if you were to begin talking about, test question, if you were to begin talking about the great things that the Romans were able to do, this is a prime example. Roman engineering, Roman plumbing, Roman sewage disposal. It's so far ahead of time. Because I'm telling you, after Rome falls, all this stuff goes away. The Roman baths, the Roman fresh water, the Roman sewage treatment or sewage disposal, it all goes away. And many of the cities will be abandoned. Yeah, I mean, our own modern cities. If an enemy of our society wanted to really stick us, if they could find a way to do away with our sewage treatment plants, to destabilize, and that really, I mean, they have security there, but I mean, if they found a way to shut those down, major cities of this country would be abandoned in 3 days. And it's not an exaggeration. You can't live like that. Not with a city of millions of people. Well, anyway, yeah, so this is a Roman aqueduct, and this won't be the last time you see this. Hint, hint. And so, yes, let's get back to this, shall we? So, just how extensive were the Roman system of roads? Like I said, the Romans built 22,000 miles of roads that crisscrossed all of Europe, ran up in England, up to Scotland, across North Africa, into the Middle East. And once again, these Roman roads were so well built, well constructed, that even long after the Roman Empire fallen away, the roads were still used. In fact, some of the roads still exist. They're not used for main thoroughfares, of course, but yeah, they're still there. The Romans dug these out. First laid down a whole bunch of gravel, and on top of that sand, and on top of the sand a layer of rocks. And then between the rocks they put concrete. And yeah, the road was bumpy, but it was better than trying to drive down a mud trail. Yeah, the Roman roads drained water. They lasted for a long time, for 1,000 years. Once again, the statistic remains. It's a person could travel faster across Rome in the days of the Roman Empire than any other time, up until the invention of the railroad, which was in the latter part of the 18th, 19th century. So, and of course, Roman baths. I mean, the Romans bathed. And I say that because after Rome is gone, people will quit bathing. Why? Because you have to have hot water to bathe, and in the cold months of winter, and so people didn't have hot water. And, so they didn't bathe, and so they smelled really bad. Really bad. I mean, throughout most of Western civilization, Europeans have had a reputation for stinking. I mean, when Columbus discovered the New World, when the Europeans began exploring new lands, Native Americans could smell Europeans coming for a mile because they didn't bathe. They didn't take care of that. Same thing with the Japanese and Chinese. When the Europeans started showing up, they'd been on ships for months, had never taken baths, and the Chinese were like, dude, man, please. Anyway, so Roman plumbing. What about Roman plumbing? The origin of the road plumbing is the Latin word plumus, which is the Latin word for lead. Why? Because all Roman pipes were made of lead. And lead, why lead? Because lead is soft, malleable, easy to shape, and of course watertight. There's a theory though that maintains that one of the causes of the Roman Empire's demise, one of the causes of its falling apart, was that for centuries they drank water from lead pipes. Lead, as you know, is toxic. It'll eat your brain, literally. And so that's a theory. But yeah, plumus, as in plumbing, yes. Public toilets, the Romans had public toilets. We've looked at those. Oh yes, air conditioning. We haven't looked at air conditioning. The Romans did have air conditioning. And let's look. And that's not it. There it is. Right here. Yes. Now this is an example of Roman air conditioning. Now, this is a Roman construction in a desert area, and here's what happened. This in this high area, these things would catch the wind, and the wind would then be channeled down under the ground. And under the ground, the temperature underground is much cooler than the temperature of the air. The air would be cooled underground, and the force of the wind would then, the shafts would come back up into these living spaces, and that air would be cool. And see, the air would pass through these things. Here's your floor, and here's the air passages. And yeah, this is a cross diagram of how it would work. The wind, see, that's the wind tower. The wind is pushed in here. Here's your cooled basement, and or they would use water for a cooling agent. You see, this is the earth. The earth, air is always cooler underground, always cooler. In fact, if you've ever went into some of the larger caves, like for example, Mammoth Cave or Ruby Falls, you find that and see, look, here's another example. Water tower, the wind tower comes in through here. Ruby Falls, these are examples of Roman air conditioning. Ruby Falls in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This is another example. The temperature of caves are a constant, and it doesn't matter what the outside temperature is. The hottest day of the year, coldest day of the year, temperature of caves as a constant 67 degrees. And so yeah, these are just more examples of how the Romans did this. Aqueducts, covered water channels. See, that's what an aqueduct would look like. Yeah, and look, no, I'm just kidding. And that's a Roman toilet, for those who hadn't seen it before. Yeah, you sit down here, do your business drops down here under your seat, and water, there's a stream of water coming through here, and it just carries your business away. I mean, the Romans are really incredible. Really incredible. And this is another picture of an aqueduct. I mean, and some of these things were colossal. I mean, see how tall that is compared to these people? This one is in Spain, I believe. And this is that picture of, this is a bath in England, the one I visited. My picture is better, though. And here is another Roman aqueduct. Now, I don't think people ever use these for bridges because the channel is too narrow. Now, there's that same bath in England. But yeah, look, built, runs like a train. Okay, let's get back to our discussion, shall we? All right, so how did Romans utilize the arch? Remember that the arch was first invented by the Sumerians, a Stone Age culture that used clay to make an arch. And hopefully I don't have to remind you of what an arch is. Yes, get it? Arch enemies. That's actually funny. But yeah, this was the extent of the arches as built by the Sumerians. Maybe they were extended into a barrel vault. But the Romans took the arch and, can we say, ran with it. Here, yes. These are pictures of Roman arches. This is called the vault. Notice how they took the arch and got really, this is a barrel vault, and this is a cross vault. Okay. How the arch was used in construction of windows. Later on in churches, but that's not here nor there. Yeah, this is another example of a barrel vault. There's your barrel vault. There's your groin vault, fan vault. And these were all developments of the Romans. Ah, yes. Now, here's the Pantheon. I've made a big deal about the Pantheon. Their picture of the Pantheon is better than mine. This was built by the Emperor Hadrian in the 2nd century AD. But let's go inside, shall we? This is a picture of the interior. Now, this is what is so miraculous about the Pantheon as you look at it, and that is this unsupported roof. I mean, this roof, by the way, has no, like, for example, if we were to build that roof today, we could, but we would use rebar, or steel rebar, metal, which we put in here. But the Romans didn't have that. What the Romans did was that as this dome ceiling approaches nearer and nearer to the top, it gets thinner and thinner. And also it gets honeycombed with, this part here was honeycombed with jars. They threw jars in the concrete, and then they poured it up here, and it was much, much lighter. And see, and this on your test question, this is called the oculus. OCULUS, the oculus. It was the Romans' way of providing light into this temple. And to see, once again, the Pantheon is the oldest and this is a painting of the Pantheon, is the oldest structure on the planet that was built and still is used for its original purpose, and that is being a house of worship. Come on, show me the picture. Here we go. All right. And we get rid of that. Thank you. Goodbye. But yeah. And that is the Pantheon. And if I ever get to go back to Rome, I intend to go here. Okay, let's get back to work, shall we? All right, the Romanesque architecture. Yes. Then let's go back, shall we? What is Romanesque architecture? Which originated in the Roman Empire. Romanesque architecture is a type of architecture that originated with the Romans. It is manifested by, and this is the first time we've mentioned it because it actually becomes more into being after the Roman Empire, but it's influenced by the Roman Empire. Thick walls, small windows, and lots of columns on the interior. Yes, like this one. That's a diagram of a Romanesque structure. This is a Romanesque structure. Notice, once again, small windows. You see. And what small window, you say, what's important about small windows? Remember that windows are the only way to light the building. And because you say, what about torches and what about, candles? What about lamps? Well, torches, candles, and lamps, yeah, they're okay, except two things. Number one, they're expensive. And two, imagine, torches, lamps, and candles are a fire hazard. Not just when they're lit, but you might recall when Notre Dame burned down. Was that last year? 2 years ago? Still hadn't been reconstructed. But one of the reasons they couldn't save it was because the interior of Notre Dame, yes, had been utilizing torches and lamps and lanterns for hundreds of years to illuminate the inside of the cathedral. Well, when you have an open flame, that open flame releases carbon. Carbon then goes up and adheres itself to the ceiling. Now, the beams, the giant wooden beams of the Cathedral of Notre Dame, then became coated with carbon, tar, which is highly flammable. In other words, when they were doing renovation, I think it was 2 years ago, on the Cathedral of Notre Dame, and one of those machines, might have been a welder, sparked and set one of those beams on fire. They couldn't put it out. I mean, it burned with an intensity because all that wood was coated with carbon. It's kind of like gasoline or oil, and could not be put out. But yes, this is Romanesque architecture. That's a good example here. See, dome structures, they need to show up some interior like that. Lots of columns on the inside. Notice how small the windows are. Lots of columns to support the roof. And the importance is, under such conditions, you don't have good vision. You don't have good illumination. Okay? All right. So let's go back. Yes, right there. What are some examples of great works of Roman architecture? Well, we talked about the Pantheon. Notice the word oculus. See that there? Isn't that incredible? Why wasn't it destroyed with the rest of Rome in the barbaric invasions? Answer, because when the barbarians came in, they just said, man, this thing is beautiful. And they walked out and left it. Barbarian, as you know, refers to the fact that the Romans and Greeks thought that everybody else's language sounded like the barking of dogs or the baying of sheep. Bar, bar, bar. Hence the name barbarian. Okay. Colosseum. What happened to the stone that built the Colosseum? If you look at the Roman Colosseum, if you look at the Roman Colosseum today, I mean, it looks like a peeled onion. You know what? That's exactly what happened to it. And this is from the inside, and down here is the chambers where they had all the animals and the gladiators. Up here is the seating. But if you look at the exterior of it, it looks like a peeled onion. And that's exactly what happened to it. That over the years, people began taking the stone from the Colosseum to use on their own building projects. Fact of the matter is, some of that stone went to the building of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome. That's an upper picture of it. That's what it was supposed to look like in its heyday. Okay. All right. Hadrian's Wall. I'm sorry. What happened to the stone that built the Colosseum? Well, yeah, it was cannibalized. The word Colosseum means sand, and it refers to the sand that lines the floor of the Colosseum. Gladiator. Gladiator comes from the word gladius, which is the Roman soldier's sword. Thumbs up. Now here's the trick. So many movies have depicted the word this right here as being good. That's not exactly true. You see, of course, combat would occur, and oftentimes one of the two combatants would be knocked down and helpless, but not dead. And then it would be up to the Caesar to decide whether or not to dispose of this person. To be real honest, it was a rare thing that gladiators got killed in gladiatorial competition. The gladiators really were the athletic superstars of the day. It took a lot of money to train them. They were highly valued. The fact of the matter is, many women thought that the sweat of gladiators was an aphrodisiac. Do I need to explain aphrodisiac to you? It heightens the sexual response, and they would actually, after a combat, they would actually go and scrape the sweat off of gladiator's body and then put it they would capture it and sell it as an aphrodisiac. But thumbs up does not mean let him live. Thumbs up actually meant stick him. Yeah. So you say, well, what does let him live mean? Well, the emperor would just give a wave of his hand. But this right here, it meant stick him. What was life like for a gladiator? Once again, very rare for a gladiator to die in the games. He would be, I won't say he's a pampered athlete, but they were too valuable to just throw away. Yes, they did die in the games, but it was a rare thing. And what does it say about the nature of the Roman people that they were amused by violence for entertainment? Well, what does it say about us that, our most popular game to this date is football, American football? But more so than that, I mean, look at our films. Look at how we entertain ourselves. Most of our police dramas, in the end, somebody gets shot. That's entertainment. Yes, Hadrian's Wall. Hadrian's Wall was a wall built across northern England to keep the Scots, the Picts, the wildlings from the north out. Yes, hippodrome. Let me show you what a hippodrome is. Hippodrome. Hippodrome was a racetrack. A Roman racetrack, which was actually a more popular sporting event. That's a hippodrome, which was actually a more popular sporting event than the gladiatorial combat. Yeah. This is a diagram, what it looked like. It's a horse track. And a horse track, actually a chariot track. And after a while, yeah, they raced each other for speed, but after a while they got into team racing. And what that was, the most popular event was that they would have teams of, say, four chariots would be on a team. And the goal of each team was to make sure that one of their chariots crossed the finish line first. And what they would do is, as they made their way around the hippodrome a certain number of times, they would block each other. And yeah, the chariot's wheels would often have spikes on them for the purpose of disabling their opponents. And just like NASCAR today, people went to love the hippodromes because of the wrecks. Yeah. Anyway, back to the matter at hand. Ah, yes. And finally, the English city of Bath. We went over that. English city of Bath, which is what I visited, and what the picture of me and my son was named the city of Bath because the Romans built a bath there because there was a natural hot spring there, and still exists. And you know what? I've talked enough today, and we will continue this chapter tomorrow. Hope you have